And for more on that story, Mike Walker from the Antarctic Ocean Alliance joins me now from Hobart, Tasmania, where that agreement was signed. Mike, as a campaigner, how happy are you with this announcement?
Very. Today we've seen history, and I don't think you see that happening all that often. I mean, it really is more than being the largest marine protected area in the world now. I think, as your piece points out, it is the first time ever that countries have come together to create a large-scale marine protected area in the high seas.
Earlier this year, President Barack Obama created the largest protected space on Earth. But now we've got a bigger one. A nearly 600,000-mile area of Antarctica's Ross Sea got universal protection on Friday. The Ross Sea is known as the last ocean because humans have barely touched it. It's home to an estimated 16,000 species. The new protection bans commercial fishing in most of the sea, but scientists can still catch small amounts of fish and krill for research in some areas. Protection of the region has been on the agenda for quite some time. It was first proposed roughly 6 years ago, but Russia and China weren't exactly on board. But a letter signed by 500 scientists made the difference, and on Friday the Commission unanimously agreed the stretch of sea would be protected. The agreement starts December 1st, 2017, but as part of a compromise, will expire after 35 years. For Newsy, I'm Jay Struberg.
While bilateral cooperation between Russia and the United States has been mostly halted over Moscow's involvement in Ukraine, there is one area where the two nations simply cannot afford to impose further restrictions. That is, in space, aboard the International Space Station. Last week, 2 Russian cosmonauts and a US astronaut set off to the ISS aboard a Russian Soyuz capsule, with 2 of them planning to live on the station until next March.
Techniques are more advanced than 20 years ago, and right now we need to test the capability of a human being to perform such long-duration flights. So this is the main objective of our flight, to test ourselves.
American Scott Kelly will remain on board the ISS, which flies some 260 miles or 418 kilometers above Earth until next March, longer than any US astronaut in history.
Whether it's exploration or experiments that improve life on Earth is, very important to our people and in the U.S. and the international community as a whole, and hopefully, the current crews and previous crews and future crews, and not just Misha, myself, will be furthering our goals to put humans on Mars someday.
The astronauts will undergo extensive medical experiments during their year in space, helping scientists to find out whether the damage done to the human body in zero gravity can be cured or reversed in order to protect crews flying to Mars in the future. NASA also said it expects the crews to make 4 spacewalks and to install equipment for the anticipated arrival of new US commercial crew capsules in 2017. Russia is currently carrying the sole responsibility of ferrying cargo and people to the ISS after the US shuttle program was shut down.
Richard E. Byrd, and his relationship with Antarctica, and the secretive missions he carried out there until his dying day. The Reader's Digest version of Richard Byrd is as follows. Born in 1888, he became an American naval officer who specialized in feats of exploration. He was a pioneering American aviator, Medal of Honor winner, polar explorer, aircraft navigator, expedition leader in the worst environments in the world, and the youngest admiral in the history of the Navy. In addition, his list of awards takes up several pages in Wikipedia, including 3 ticker tape parades in his honor. In short, he was Indiana Jones on steroids. Some people will say that Roy Chapman Andrews was the real Indiana Jones, and you might be right. But Richard Byrd beat Indy 6 days a week and twice on Sunday. I mention all his accolades to paint a picture of credibility and trust. governments of the United States and the world trusted his judgment and leadership, and took advantage of every chance they had to put him in charge of special missions. The first large-scale mission was an expedition to Antarctica in 1928. This was noteworthy because even though he had just flown over the North Pole in 1926, all expeditions from 1928 on were focused on the South. The expedition lasted 2 years, and during it, at the age of 41, he was promoted to admiral. His second Antarctic expedition ran from 1933 to 1935, and his third from 39 to 40. While in Antarctica, he was also an advisor for other countries who had their own expeditions, including England, France, Germany, and building off previous countries' expeditions from Belgium, Japan, and Sweden. He then helped lead U.S. Navy fleet operations in World War II, was present during the Japanese surrender in 1945, but then something strange happened. He went back to Antarctica. Now, some of you aren't surprised because he'd been there since 1928, and I agree with you. It's the how that's interesting here. His fourth trip to Antarctica wasn't an expedition. It was a military operation called Operation High Jump. Commanding an entire aircraft carrier group that included 13 support ships, Admiral Byrd led 4,700 men to the South Pole, for reasons that are still shrouded to this day. Some say they were chasing the remaining Nazi fleet, even though Germany had surrendered a full year earlier. Others say there was a Nazi base established in Antarctica during the war, when Admiral Byrd was absent. None of these theories are important for this video. What we do know is that the US had sent an excessively large military force to the ice, all under the guise of peaceful intentions. During this operation, Admiral Byrd told a Chile newspaper this: "The most important result of his observations and discoveries is the potential effect that they have in relation to the security of the United States." Admiral Byrd toured the States and gave interviews, the most interesting of which is a national television show in 1954 called The Long Island's Chronoscope. At the time of the interview, there were 7 nations currently engaged in Antarctica, including Russia, Australia, Argentina, Chile, and New Zealand. During the interview, the Admiral talked about planning the next military mission to Antarctica. It was called Operation Deep Freeze and ran from 1955 to 1956. The mission was completed, and he supposedly returned home. Now this is where you come in and say, so what? And normally I'd agree with you, except for what happened next. Nothing happened next. The missions just suddenly stopped, and that was it. No other expeditions, military or otherwise, were conducted on the continent, ever. Then a treaty was put in place banning any country from doing basically anything. The end. And if you're wondering what you're missing, it's this. Admiral Byrd goes on television, says that this massive body of land, most of which sits on a plateau 2 miles high, is rich with every resource you could ever want, energy rich, pristine, with no indigenous population or plant life, and every country that has sent teams is ready to carve it up like a big turkey. Not to mention, there's an expanse of land larger than the United States they haven't even looked at yet. And out of the blue, everyone just calls the whole thing off? There are no environmentalists in 1959. This is land of diner food and 20-cent gas, and now the interior of Antarctica is off limits, with no revisions until the year 2041. You can take tours of the outer islands, but there is a hidden line, enforced by the military, that you will not be able to cross.
Guest for this evening is Admiral Richard E. Byrd.
But strangely enough, there's left in the world today an area as big as the United States that's never been seen by a human being. And that's beyond the pole on the other side of the South Pole from Middle America. And I think it's quite astonishing that there should be an area as big as that unexplored.
With a tremendous
So there's a lot of adventure left down at the bottom of the world.
Well, Admiral Byrd, I can understand, I think everybody can, the interest in the North Pole because it's so near our greatest challenger, Soviet Russia. But why this interest in the bottom of the world? Nobody living down there, is there?
No, it's pretty cold.
Admiral, you speak of the resources of Antarctica. What are they? What are the natural resources there?
Well, we've found enough of coal within 180 miles of the South Pole in a great ridge of mountains. It's not covered with snow, enough to supply the whole world for quite a while.
Well,
that's the coal. Now, there's evidence of many other minerals. We are pretty sure there's oil. Now, that coal shows the bottom of the world. Probably uranium there.
Is it any secret? Is there uranium there? That would be the only thing that would be practical to actually go after, I suppose. Everything else would be economically unfeasible, wouldn't it?
Well, as we recklessly expend our resources, the time will come when we'll have to go after that stuff down there. Well, you know, I avoided what you said about uranium. I'm not sure about that. I don't want to have the world fighting over the Antarctic.
And Robert, is there a competition among other nations to try to get information about Antarctica and possibly to secure some of these resources?
Well, yes. There are now 7 nations: the Argentine, the Chile, New Zealand, Britain, and so on. Now, you can understand those people down there being interested because they live down there. The New Zealanders, the Argentinians, the Chileans, and Australians. And so we don't do much about claiming anything.
Admiral, you make it sound a little crowded. Are there that many expeditions now there or en route there?
Well, you know, as I said, it's the most peaceful place in the world, but I don't think it will be for long.
Now, a major agreement on ocean conservation today. Dozens of nations created the world's largest marine reserve at the bottom of the globe. William Brangham has the story.
24 countries in the European Union agreed today to set aside 600,000 square miles of ocean. The newly protected zone is in the Ross Sea, which borders Antarctica. Most commercial fishing will be banned in the area, though researchers will be allowed to take limited samples. The protection will take effect starting December 2017 and will continue for 35 years.